Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, we're going to continue on. We'll do some more news and notes, just some more coaching stuff going on, do a little bit of NFL draft, and then we'll continue with a year in review for the Green Bay Packers. So first of all, the Jets hired former Broncos assistant GM Darren Moge as general manager, which means as of right now, John Eric Sullivan is still with the Green Bay Packers. As far as I know, he doesn't have any additional interviews or anything lined up. It's the vice president of player personnel. So if we can hang on to him, that'd be pretty solid. The Lions have promoted their linebackers coach Kelvin Shepard to be their new defensive coordinator. Former Packer Chris Banjo is interviewing for the special teams job with the Cowboys. Matt Eberflus is being looked at for defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. Robert Saleh officially back with the 49ers. And I think we're about caught up with that. Suppose we could also spend some time talking about the football games, but I don't have too much to say other than what I've already said. I don't want the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I don't want the Eagles in the Super Bowl. The rest kind of takes care of itself. The one benefit, as I said last night, to the Chiefs making it is that if it's Chiefs-Washington, you've got the Chicago Bears passed on us Super Bowl with Jaden Daniels, the guy that they didn't even bother to sit down with, making it to the Super Bowl in his first year, along with Patrick Mahomes, the guy that they passed up on to take Mitchell freaking Trubisky. So, be the ultimate put Bears fans in hell Super Bowl. There's no upside, however, to the Eagles getting in. So that just can't be a thing. And as for the NFL draft, we'll give a little update on the East-West Shrine Bowl. The practices currently are underway. The game is going to be January 30th at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. But a lot of people out there with the practices, giving some updates and whatnot. Just a couple little notes that I've been able to scramble together. Some of the standout performers there. Kanata Mumfield, Pittsburgh wide receiver. Antoine Powell-Ryland, Virginia Tech edge rusher. Showcased his quick get-off and spin move. Could be a potential draft riser. And Zeke Biggers, Georgia Tech interior defensive lineman, stood out with his powerful hands and bursts during drills, drawing attention from some scouts. Shedeur Sanders is there, I believe, but is not participating. He's using the event to meet with some NFL teams. This is becoming a very common thing. The top prospects don't really participate in much, including the combine and whatnot. We'll see if he does participate in that. But you got guys like Caleb who didn't do anything and ended up going number 1 overall anyway. So I don't think that there's been a lot of anything really negative happening for a lot of the top prospects for just not participating. So I think that we're going to continue to see that. I have a feeling that's going to happen. Shedeur Sanders is not going to take a risk of, busting his ACL at the combine or anywhere else for that matter. But apparently he's met with the Giants, the Titans, and the Browns, among some other teams. He's considered a top quarterback prospect, potential top 10 pick, very likely top 10 pick, but we'll see. Some of the top prospects to watch: Kenneth Grant, Michigan defensive tackle, dominant force on the defensive line, scouts noting his combination of size, power, and agility, projected as a potential first-round pick. Kyle McCord, Syracuse quarterback, is another standout coming off a stellar season with 4,779 pass yards and 34 touchdowns, seen as a solid third-round prospect. And Kobe Bryant, Kansas cornerback, and Jabbar Muhammad, Oregon cornerback, are among the top defensive backs, with Bryant excelling in coverage and Muhammad showcasing his technique and instincts. So there you go. All right, let's get into what we're here to do. Why don't we do tight end right now? We'll look at the Green Bay Packers tight ends. Obviously, that's primarily Tucker Kraft we're talking about. Tucker Kraft's PFF grade put him as the 19th highest graded tight end with a 67.8 PFF grade. He is sandwiched between Dallas Goedert of Philadelphia and Jordan Atkins of Cleveland. If you look at his receiving grade, the heck did he go? Oh, it's right here, 18th with a 71 receiving grade between Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki. Looking at some of the more statistics here, Tucker Kraft was 8th in yards with 733. He was tied for sixth with 7 touchdowns. Only Jonnu Smith, Zach Ertz, George Kittle, Sam Laporta, and Mark Andrews had more touchdowns. So definitely one of the more productive tight ends. Yards per route run, he was down at 16th, 1.55 yards per route run. One of the lowest average depth of targets. It must be all the little screen passes to Tucker Kraft, but he ranked 42nd out of 45, which is 4.7 yards average depth of target. He had the second longest reception of any tight end, was 67 yards. Only Chigoziem Okonkwo was higher, was 70. Tied for 19th with in drops. He had he tied for 19th. Just 2 drops on the season. As a percentage, he ranked 22nd, 3.5% drop rate. Contested catch rate, he ranked 22nd, tied for 22nd, 57.1%. He was 4 of 7. And he was, not surprisingly, tied for number 1 in missed tackles forced with 15. Overall, Tucker Kraft ranked 5th in passer rating when targeted, 131.7. Only Foster Moreau, George Kittle, Isaiah Likely, and Mark Andrews were higher. As far as blocking goes, obviously they spend a lot more time run blocking than pass blocking, but as a pass blocker out of 85, he ranked 51st with a 61 pass blocking grade. As a run blocker, he ranked 55th with a 54.3 run blocking grade. So he gets a lot of credit for being a really good blocker, but according to PFF, he's a pretty bad blocker, actually, which is probably why his grades were quite a bit lower despite being a decent receiver. With that said, there are only 4 tight ends that actually have a 70 or higher run blocking grade: Andrew Ogletree, Evan Ingram, George Kittle, and Josh Oliver. So something I think he could probably improve on a touch. Shouldn't be that surprising. He was a part of the group that couldn't run block to save their lives, so shouldn't be massively surprising. Moving over to next-gen stats, Tucker Kraft is 18th on the second page, which would put him, at 88th out of 134 in catch rate over expected, so that's not very good. He had a negative 2.1% catch rate over expected. Receiving EPA, however, he ranked 5th, plus 32.6 EPA. Yards after the catch over expected cumulatively. He was the second highest after George Kittle, 159 yards after the catch over expected. EPA per target, he ranked 14th. And then last but not least, looking at FTN, when we look at DVOA, it's George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Josh Oliver, and then Tucker Kraft had the 4th highest DVOA for tight ends. So, if you're a big fan of DVOA, man, we got ourselves a good football team because they just love everybody. But if we look at Tucker Kraft and his grades and whatnot let me switch this over to receiving because that's more interesting. If we look at his grades over the course of the season, certainly got better as we went on. Pretty rough kind of early, 50, 60, 50, 50, 70, 40, 50. So through the first 7 weeks, he had one grade in the 70s, a bunch of 40s and 50s. Then it was 80, 60, 50, 50. Call that a 60. 90, 60, 70, 70, 60, 60, 60. So from about week 13 on, he became a much better tight end. No more 50s after that. In fact, starting in week 12 against San Francisco is a 59.5. You can call that a 60. 60, 90. That was his 6 targets, 6 receptions, 78 yards against Miami. 61, 73, 73, 65, 66, 63 down the stretch. So really just 2 really good games. Jacksonville 83, Miami 80, 90. But then you got 3 other 70s in there. So 5 games with 70 or higher, 2 with 80 or higher, 1 at a 90. Then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the 60s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the 50s, and then a 49 PFF grade against Arizona. The other tight ends, Ben Sims. Ben Sims played 15 games, had 4 targets, 4 receptions, 42 yards, 54 overall grade, 56 receiving grade. Luke Musgrave played in 8 games, had 9 targets, 7 receptions, 45 yards, 47 overall grade, 51 receiving grade. John Fitzpatrick played in 8 games, had 1 target, 1 reception for 2 yards, 55 grade, 49 receiving, or 48 receiving grade. So not a ton doing outside of Tucker Kraft with his 71 receiving grade. If we look at Musgrave, he didn't play very much. He only had 2 games where he ran double-digit routes, Tennessee and Minnesota, but his highest PFF grade of the season was a 60.4, and he played 5 snaps in that game against Philly. That was his best game. His highest receiving grade was Week 18 against Chicago with a 69.7. So definitely not what you want to see. He had a much better rookie season, had a 70 receiving grade, but injuries and whatnot have pretty well derailed this. Played the first 4 weeks, didn't see him again until week 16. So not great. But all right, why don't we go ahead and take a little bit of an early break. We'll come back, and I got some better news for you as we look at running backs. Just some pretty fantastic stuff. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, let's talk running back, shall we? If we just look at overall grade, and there's a lot of good running backs, there are 6 with a 90 or higher PFF grade. Derrick Henry leads the way with a 94.2, followed by Bijan Robinson with a 92.8, followed by Josh Jacobs, 92.3. What about Saquon Barkley? He's amazing. He has so many yards. 85. Okay? He's 10th. So just deal with it. Guy runs through wide open holes. Whoop-de-frickin-do. The amazing thing here isn't even so much that Josh Jacobs ranks 3rd. It's the fact that right after Saquon Barkley is Emmanuel Wilson. Now, if he had played less, this would be less impressive. But Emmanuel Wilson has always been a pretty good football player. We've always really liked him. We've always thought he played really well. In fact, in 2023, he had almost the same grade. He had an 80 PFF grade as a rookie. This year's an 82.9. His rushing grade was an 80. It was a 79.9. That is now up to an 86.3. But last year, you look at it and go, well, 4.7 yards per attempt, 80 PFF grade, 80 rushing grade is quite good. But we're talking 26 attempts. You know what I mean? 26 attempts, 121 yards, blah, blah, blah. He did it again, folks. In fact, he got better. He had 106 attempts, 508 yards, 4.8 yards per attempt, and 4 touchdowns. How do you get 4.8 yards per attempt behind the Packers' offensive line? I don't know. 28 missed tackles forced, 2.9 yards after contact per attempt. That probably plays a big part in that. The Green Bay Packers this past year basically had 2 top 10 running backs. Emmanuel, I think he's for real. I just do. I don't know if he's going to get pushed back down again. I don't know, but the guy's never been anything other than good. I think we got very fortunate in finding an undrafted free agent out of Fort Valley State that is just an absolutely fantastic running back. And he fits Gutekunst's mold perfectly. He's 6'1", 226. He's a Goot back. He's a LaFleur back. It's not like, well, he's 5'9", he's 195 pounds. It just doesn't really fit the mold, so they're not going to really blah, 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 blah. Dude is 6'1", 226, all right? And if we look at rushing grade, Josh Jacobs is 4th. Emmanuel Wilson is 9th. Just absolutely crazy. Saquon Barkley is 11th. So it's in the top 10, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, James Conner, Bucky Irving, Chuba Hubbard, Emmanuel Wilson, and Tyler Algier. I'm telling you, if we can get that offensive line, and I don't really know what all we're actually going to be doing. I don't know if we're bringing back Josh Myers. I'd rather we don't. At the very least, I'd love to bring in some competition. But, man, if we could really step that up, we have got some backs that can just do some serious damage. And we haven't even seen Marshawn Lloyd yet. But going through some of the statistics here, Josh Jacobs, 7th in yards, 1,410 yards, 4.4 yards per attempt, 16 touchdowns, 5 fumbles. Real solid year. If you look at yards per attempt, Emmanuel Wilson is tied for 8th with Austin Eckler, James Cook, Chuba Hubbard, and Bijan Robinson with 4.8 yards per attempt, which, again, I don't know how you do that in Green Bay. Josh Jacobs is tied for 21st, along with Aaron Jones, ironically, 4.4 yards per attempt. Jacobs fourth in touchdowns with 16. Just James Cook, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Derrick Henry had more, 17, 18, and 19 to be exact. Yards after contact per attempt, Josh Jacobs is seventh with 3.49 yards after contact, which is crazy considering he had 4.4 yards. That's less than 1 yard before contact. He had still managed 4.4 yards per after contact, or 4.4 yards per attempt. Emmanuel Wilson 31st in that metric. Missed tackles forced, Josh Jacobs second behind only Derrick Henry. Henry had 88, Josh Jacobs 79. Third is Saquon with 72. Emmanuel Wilson 35th, which is pretty impressive considering the lack of opportunities that he had. Josh Jacobs is tied for fourth with 10-plus yard carries. 34 times he was able to do that. He was also 11th in carries over 15 yards with 12. Looking at receiving, Josh Jacobs, a guy that was not used as a receiver in Las Vegas for whatever reason, comes to Green Bay. Matt LaFleur says right out of the gate, I think Gutekunst said it as well, we really think he's a talented guy as far as the receiving goes, and he was underutilized, and we want to use him in that way. Third highest receiving grade, behind only Bucky Irving and David Montgomery, 89.2 receiving grade. He was 13th in receiving yards at 382, had just one touchdown, 9.8 yards per reception. Not surprisingly, he was the fourth highest in yards after the catch per reception. Only Samaje Perine, Derrick Henry, and Austin Eckler were higher. And he was tied for number one in drop percentage and drops because he didn't have any. He also had a 100% contested catch rate. He was 1 for 1. And led the league in missed tackles forced among running backs as a receiver with 23. Bucky Irving was second with 20. The lack of touchdowns puts him at 23rd for passer rating when targeted, but still just a phenomenal receiver for the Packers. Flipping over to next-gen stats, rush yards over expected. Josh Jacobs was 6th with 217 yards over expected. You gotta love it. Emmanuel Wilson with 74, ranking 32nd, which again is pretty impressive considering the amount of opportunities he had. Rush EPA is kind of hilarious. Emmanuel Wilson, and again, EPA is cumulative. Emmanuel Wilson, 9th. Chris Brooks, 19th. And I don't know where Josh Jacobs is on this list. Looking at the amount of times a running back hit 15 miles per hour or higher, Josh Jacobs was 15th. He was able to do that 34 times. 20 miles per hour or more, 0. So he doesn't have that top gear. It doesn't look like any Green Bay Packers running back did. There were 31 running backs that hit that. And it looks like Saquon is the true speedster of the group. He did it 11 times. The next highest is 5. Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs. Derrick Henry, wow, that's pretty impressive. 5 times he cracked 20 miles per hour. That's, I mean, as old as he is and as big as he is, to be able to hit 20 miles an hour, that dude is a beast, man. Holy cow. And then looking over at the FTN statistics, we've got DYAR. Josh Jacobs ranks 7th. He's got a DYAR of 197 yards, so essentially saying that he got about 197 more yards than what you would expect an average running back to get. His DVOA was a 6.5%, which ranked 12th. Emmanuel Wilson, though, 4th highest DVOA. 16.7% better than your average running back. Just James Cook, Derrick Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs were higher. That puts him ahead of Bijan Robinson, David Montgomery, Chuba Hubbard, Jalen Warren, Jerome Ford, Saquon, Tyler Algier, Josh Jacobs, etc., etc. For those wondering, Aaron Jones, 28th. And as we go through week to week, Josh Jacobs, very consistent, got better even down the stretch, but his grades kind of rounding here, 60, 70, 70, 60, 70, 70, 60, 70, 60, 70, 80, 80, 60, 60, 90, 70, 70, 90. So that arrow just kept pointing up. By week 12 against San Francisco, the guy was just an absolute phenom. 86, 86, 69, 60, 90, 72, 77, and 91 is how he ended the season. Even before that, he was fine. He was fantastic. But just an absolute ridiculous freak. Emmanuel Wilson, pretty consistent, but on a lesser way. Unfortunately, his worst game came against Philly, but 60, I'll call it 70, 50, 70, 70, 70, 60, 50, 70, 60, 70, 70, 60, 50, 80, 60, 70, 40. So again, pretty consistent 70s and 60s all the way down, a lot of 70s. Just two bad games, really. One of them was against Seattle, one of them against Philly. But one game in the 80s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in the 70s. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 60s, 3 in the 50s, 1 in the 40s. And then Chris Brooks, for those that are interested, 60, 50, 60, 50, 60, 50, 70, 70, 70, 70, 50, 50, 50. Marshawn Lloyd, just one target, one reception, 3 yards, 6 carries, 15 yards, 2.5 yards per attempt, 53 overall grade, 54 rushing grade. But that was just in one game. We'll see what he can do next year. All right, let's take our final break. We'll come back and look at the offensive line. That should finish the offense as a whole. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, let's get started with the offensive line. We'll start with offensive tackle. As far as overall grades go, and again, I generally do not like how PFF does this because, I don't know, I guess I don't care as much about run blocking as they do. But overall, Zach Tom was the 5th highest graded offensive tackle in football. He was the 2nd highest graded right tackle behind only Penei Sewell. But overall, Teron Armstead, Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, and Jordan Mailata were the only tackles graded higher. And then we got to go down to 43rd to get to Rasheed Walker. He had a 68.6 overall grade. But again, it was bad run blocking, fantastic pass blocking. If we look at run blocking, by the way, Zach Tom was the 3rd highest graded run blocker, which I still can't get over. Only Penei Sewell and Jordan Mailata were higher. He had an 87.8 run blocking grade, Sewell 91.5, and Mailata 95. And that guy is just absolutely out of control. We got to go to page 2 here to get to Rasheed. He's the 72nd highest graded run blocker. So, I mean, it is a problem. 53.5 run blocking grade. That's just out of 87 tackles. So, not the best. Pass blocking, however, Zach Tom 14th with an 81 PFF grade. Rasheed Walker 18th with an 80.1 PFF grade. So, 2 top 20 pass blocking tackles, 1 top 15 pass blocking tackle, 1 top 5 overall tackle in Zach Tom. As far as their week-to-week went, maybe a little concern for Rasheed Walker. He definitely started off a little bit better. In his last 4 games, the only good pass blocking game was the Philadelphia game. He kind of had a 3-game slump there, New Orleans, Minnesota, Chicago. But aside from that, relatively consistent. 60, 80, 80, 80, 70, 70, 70, 50, 80, 80, 80, 60, 70, 70, and then you got the 60, 60, 60, 70. His only good run blocking game was Week 18 against Chicago, was an 87. His next highest was like a 64. So it's a pretty brutal situation. I wouldn't ask for a replacement of Rasheed Walker. You can't pass up on a guy like this. But like everything else, go get as much competition as you can. And if you happen to find a stud that's better than that, go ahead and use him. But as of right now, Rasheed's the guy, and I'm more or less content with it. Zach Tom, one of the more consistent guys in football. His only bad pass blocking game was Week 5 against LA. And then we all saw, this past game was a little bit rough against Philly, but he still had a 63 grade in that game. It was his 2nd worst game of the season. The real problem was the run blocking. He had a 48 run blocking grade, which was his worst of the season. But I'm not going to go through every single week. But yeah, he's about 70s and 80s just about every single week. So real good football player. They credited him for 4 sacks, 3 of which came since Week 14. So, if you want to find some kind of reason to panic, I suppose there's that. But he graded out just perfectly fine. 2 hits, 22 hurries, 28 total pressures on the season, 7 penalties against him. Played 1,100 snaps at right tackle, 1 at right guard, 1 at left guard. I don't know what the heck that was all about, unless that was just a mistake notation. Probably. Guard, I think, is the most interesting. I think the 2 guards that we had, at least for me, kind of flew under the radar. Definitely pretty important pieces to the equation. Elton Jenkins, kind of similar to Rashid, graded as the 34th highest graded offensive guard, which I think is absolutely stupid when you look at it. He does 61 run blocking, 82 pass blocking. They have him at a 65. So he went from a 61, his 61 went up to a 65 because of an 82 pass blocking grade. What the hell are you talking about? That should be like a 79. I just don't understand that. Sean Ryan was graded 51st overall, 59 run blocking, 66 pass blocking grade. As far as the run blocking is concerned, Elton Jenkins 46th, Sean Ryan 54. Pass blocking, Elton Jenkins number 1 in the entire NFL. That's something that should be recognized. That's crazy. I didn't know that until right this moment. Number 1 pass blocking guard in all of football. Sean Ryan, 35th. And I think the really exciting thing about Elton Jenkins, the worst thing is he had a 0 pass blocking grade against Philly. Just freaking whatever. The good thing, though, is the run blocking really started to pick up second half of the season. So his first 2 weeks were fantastic, 74-70 as a run blocker. Then it was 50-40, 40-50, 50-50, 40-40. After that, 87-34, we're working on it. 65, 64, 67, 64, 78, and 60. So aside from that 34 in there, he never really had any bad run blocking games the entire rest of the way down the stretch. And if you go from week 14 in Detroit, he didn't have any. Now, it wasn't great run blocking, but, again, from week 3 through week 11, he had only 40s and 50s. And then from then on, again, aside from this 34, it was 60s, 70s, and 80s. Pass blocking was fairly consistent, 60s, 70s, and 80s the entire way down. And then he had his 0 pass blocking grade against Philly. Now, remember, he did get injured in that game, so you can kind of throw that one out. So he really didn't have any bad pass blocking games. In fact, his worst pass blocking grade of the entire season, not including his 4 snaps in the Philly game, was a 62. So really fantastic. And then again, as far as the run blocking is concerned, starting around week 12, San Francisco, he really started to pick that up. So he had a 61 run blocking grade, but really down the stretch, he was showing some impressive stuff. Unfortunately, it ended with a frickin' injury. Again, I'm so sick of this crap. Every time, dude. And guess what's going to happen? Elton's going to take some time coming back, and he's going to be a little iffy, and he's going to take a year to get back, and then as soon as he finally, yay, we got Elton Jenkins back, the guy's going to freaking get hurt again. He's 29 years old, for crying out loud. Oh, it's so freaking annoying. Sean Ryan, on the other hand, is still Sean Ryan. He's basically, maybe a slightly better version of what he was, but still very up and down. He also seemed to get a little better down the stretch. His first good run blocking game was week 14 against Detroit, 72, but then he followed it up week 15 and also week 18. So he had 3 of his last 6 games where he graded in the 70s run blocking, so maybe he kind of turned a corner there. I don't really know. Pass blocking, though, is where he gets real inconsistent, and this has been him kind of since he got here. 60-30, 80-70-50, 80-60, 50-50, 80-50, 80-30, 50-60, 70-80-30. So very up and down. 3 games in the 30s. All of them are butted up next to a game that was in the 80s, either before or after. Just wildly inconsistent. I mean, can he start to, improve on that? Last year he had an overall grade of 42. So, the ups and downs were much more downs than ups, so it's still improvement. Maybe year 3 he really takes a jump, but I think with a lot of things, I wouldn't mind just going and finding some talent. Obviously, we have Jordan Morgan already. Hopefully he can come in and make some waves somewhere. But bringing in additional competition is not something I would be opposed to in any way whatsoever. But yeah, Elton Jenkins, man. Number one pass blocker. Me likey. What I don't likey so much is center. Out of 43 centers, Josh Myers ranks 41st. 41st. So that sucks. He had a 54.2 PFF grade. Of course, Matt LaFleur said it was his best year of his career, which is stupid. His run blocking grade ranks 42nd out of 43 with a 50.9 PFF grade. If it makes you feel any better, it was only one spot behind Graham Barton, who we were supposedly supposed to draft. His pass blocking grade was better, but he ranked 26th with a 62.5 pass blocking grade. It's just enough is enough. It's not good. He had one good run blocking game, week 15 against Seattle, 73.3. Otherwise, it's all a lot of 50s, some 30s and 40s mixed in. And then pass blocking, I mean, it's like Sean Ryan, but, just with less good. 50, 80, 60, 70, 50, 50, 80, 70, 50, 50, 60, 13, 70, 70, 40, 70, 50. You notice there's a pattern with that last week against Philly just getting whooped on. But it's just, low, high, low, high, low, low, high, high, low, 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 really low, high, high, low, high, low. It's just, come on, man. Just no. All right? Just freaking no. I'm sorry if he knows all your calls and he's really good at getting the ball into Jordan's hands and he understands the offense. That's all great. That's wonderful. I don't care. The guy's he's not good enough. He's not good enough. So, look, we need a new right guard. We need a new center. And I would not be opposed to... I mean, you also got to remember Elton Jenkins coming off an injury going on 30 next year. I just think we got to throw in some bodies in there and have some healthy competition and see what we can do. Packers have been real good at getting, like 3 offensive linemen every year. Obviously, last year, they didn't do that. They took the big swing in the first round and then kind of took the rest of the draft off, which is fine. When you do 3 every single year, then you decide not to, but you're going to go with the big one. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But I think we gotta take another couple swings at this thing. Just my thought. All right, I'm going to leave you guys with that. We'll obviously move on to defense starting tomorrow. We'll see how far we can get with that, but you guys have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.